The Big Bang at 50. The Big Bang has fascinated scientists for close to a century and is widely accepted as the cosmological event that spawned our ever expanding universe. While none of us were present during the explosion that scattered matter throughout the cosmos and gave rise to the galaxies, stars, and planets, we have witnessed a smaller version of it for the last half century. The years 1962 to 1964 gave birth to some of the most influential and lasting pop culture icons of our time. It was a cultural big bang that has had lasting reverberations on what we watch, listen to, and read in 2014. The list of icons that have turned 50 over the last couple of years is a who's who of the most popular figures or creations in the worlds of music, movies, sports, and pop culture. The Beatles, Muhammad Ali, James Bond, Spider Man, G.I. Joe, all were born or came to prominence during that 2 year period. To get a better idea of the cultural impact of that time period, let's begin in 1962. In film, Ian Fleming's super suave secret agent, James Bond, debuted on the silver screen in Dr. No. Bond's first cinematic adventure helped to transform spy movies for decades to come, and its influence was realized in comics. Even Wonder Woman became a spy in the late 60s, and television's The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Mission Impossible, and The $6 Million Man. In comics, Marvel published a couple of titles that would change the way that comic book stories would be told. Amazing Fantasy 15, featuring Spider-Man, and The Incredible Hulk #1 hit the stands, and along with the Fantastic Four in 1961, signaled a fundamental shift away from the way comic book stories were told by DC Comics at the time. The new heroes from Marvel seemed to connect with young readers during the turbulent 60s, and many of the characters that Marvel rolled out later in the decade, the X-Men, the Avengers, now form the core of their cinematic universe. In fact, only a handful of the characters in Marvel's movies, including those in this summer's Guardians of the Galaxy, were created after 1969. 1963. The year belonged to Doctor Who made his debut on the BBC with the episode The Unearthly Child. 13 actors have portrayed the Time Lord over the show's 50-year span, and it still has one of the coolest themes in the history of film or television. Doctor Who has spawned several spin-offs over the years: Torchwood, K9, The Sarah Jane Chronicles, and legions of fans around the world continue to celebrate the show at conventions. In September, X-Men #1 is published, and Marvel's mutants and their struggle mirror the events of the civil rights movement that gripped the United States during the decade. Professor X and Magneto's opposing views paralleled the relationship and differences of opinion between Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. The title was canceled before the end of the decade, but was revived in the 1970s and later became Marvel's flagship title in the 80s and 90s. 1964. 4 years into the swinging 60s, a rock and roll quartet from Liverpool, England played on The Ed Sullivan Show. After their performance was broadcast live on network television, the Beatles took North America by storm and went on to change the face of music forever. John, Paul, George, and Ringo launched the British Invasion, defined the rock and roll sound of the 60s, and became the template for the boy bands that followed them, including the Monkees, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and most recently, One Direction. To this day, Muhammad Ali continues to be one of the most iconic sports figures of our time. His ascension into pop culture prominence started before his February bout with Sonny Liston, but his stunning victory over the favored Liston gave Ali, then known as Cassius Clay, the heavyweight world title, and rocketed him to stardom. Ali was almost more entertaining outside of the ring, and his public persona, then seen as radical and thoroughly entertaining, was the model that modern publicity seekers still draw upon. Ali was the first to embrace the culture of celebrity that is now dominated by TMZ and the celebrities, athletes, and reality TV stars that fill the headlines. G.I. Joe, America's immovable fighting man, also debuted in 1964, and the military-inspired action figure was a hit with boys who, up until that time, didn't have an option in the doll market. As the decade progressed, G.I. Joe morphed from a military hero to a super spy to take advantage of the excitement being generated by the James Bond films. The Joe brand has endured over the years with more toys, successful comics, an iconic 80s cartoon, and most recently, a couple of big-screen adaptations. Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, first swung into action in 1964, and this May marked the character's half-century in publication. Despite not being considered a part of the top tier of Marvel's pantheon, Matt Murdock has appeared on television and the silver screen and remains one of the publisher's most popular characters. Other highlights from 1964 included the debut of the game show Jeopardy, that recently celebrated its 50th year during a March telecast and the release of the Rolling Stones' self-titled debut album. Other seminal pop culture icons and events will soon be approaching 50, but it was this 2-year period that generated a great deal of what we listen to, watch, and consume on a daily basis. Like the Big Bang a millennium ago, the force of the pop culture explosion 50-odd years ago has passed, but its echoes continue to resonate in our lives to this day and probably will for years to come.